recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, a soccer podcast covering all things in the EPL and how we'll include the World Cup from a bench perspective. I'm your host, Ben, and I'm here to say it is not coming home. I just wanted to kind of do a little quip. And I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Rex. Rex, good to see you again.
Good to see you, and it's coming home if you live in Marrakesh,
Oh, there we go. I like that.
maybe.
I like that. And we also have a special appearance by our special guest as always. So Jeremy, likewise, good to see you.
Coming home to Zagreb.
Maybe there we go as well. Wasn't expecting for the geography lessons. Before we dive in, we do want to start the show off with Grant Wall passing with that news. Rex, I know even before we started, you were mentioning that you recently read a book about him, or by him.
Yeah, yeah. I actually I got a book last Christmas by Grant Wall. I think he's written two books. This was Masters of Modern Soccer, and I read it this summer, and it was really good because he talked with a bunch of people, and he actually I guess it was an interview, but it was more honestly like a chat kind of, and it'd be like a 2 hour chat with Roberto Martinez or Christian Pulisic, and you could tell that the players were comfortable talking to him, and he just it was good interviews. They were like serious soccer talk, but also like funny and jokey at the same time. You could tell that the players really liked talking to him, and that he was a genuinely nice person, and that's really what I got from the book, other than obviously his vast soccer knowledge. It was insane. And Jeremy, I don't know if I texted you and Ben Jones about this, but it's like at the end there's 4 pages, and all the pages are Borussia Dortmund transfers and how much money they made basically on all these and just to look at the names, it was like Dembele, all of these people. It was pretty cool, and it showed like how much money they made by bringing these players cheap and selling for a lot of money. And he also talked to the Dortmund sporting director, and it was really cool. It was a good book.
Maybe another name to add to that soon if the rumors are true. But we don't have to get into that now. Jeremy, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, he wasn't really my writer. Like he covered a lot of the United States soccer. Obviously Rex talked about how he covered a lot. His books are about all sorts of things in soccer, but he was really prominent in the United States national team, and that just kind of wasn't my jam. But I always knew his name. I always followed him on Twitter. Really enjoyed his writing. One thing I say is he was a really good writer. Most people that write for Sports Illustrated, they're not just good at covering the sport and talking about the sport to a sports specific audience, a soccer specific audience. He was a good writer for people who are not interested in soccer. I think he was able to bring a lot of people into that fold. So, and Rex mentioned something that I've heard on several podcasts and interviews that I've seen recently, which is that he was really generous with his time, despite being like the guy. He was like the preeminent soccer journalist in America, and some of the people that I follow and were friends with in the Barcelona community read like small blogs, small podcasts, and he was willing to step in, take time out of his day and jump on some of those podcasts, jump on some of those blogs for an interview. So he was just a very kind and generous person who never really seemed like he made it in a way that he was above anybody's station. He was just humble in that way. So it's gutting. It's gutting that he passed away in this way. Especially he was, there's some concern that he's very outspoken with his beliefs, and his brother's gay. We don't have to get into that, but it just a very principled, very kind person.
I think we could. Or
right.
should. It's not necessarily to say that something nefarious happened, though. You could go there as well. But I think the main thing is both what you guys have said have stuck with me. One, pretty much nearly anyone that was speaking about him on Twitter that knew him wanted to say how good of a nice person he is, and genuine he is. And to me, that is kind of unique these days. But another is usually in that kind of line of I guess in that industry these days, it really is all about access, and it did seem like he used his platform to challenge power, in a way you don't really see. So he was truly unique in that respect as well. And one of the main ways was not just him wearing the shirt to show respect and pride for his brother, but another thing was even the day before he passed, I think he did something on Substack about the migrants and the deaths for the people that were working on all those stadiums that a lot of people over there have ignored. or maybe they were threats and they decided to do it that way. But he wasn't. He seemed brave and was genuine in his conviction and beliefs. So I think that's worth praising as well.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
definitely.
that's a great point. And I was just looking a second ago. It looks like the bodies come over here. There is going to be an autopsy. His you mentioned his brother said that he got some death threats after that incident. So hopefully nothing nefarious happened, and maybe in a really bleak way to go out watching a great soccer game is maybe not, it's going out early, but it's not the worst way. So maybe there was some moment of peace right before he passed.
Well, that's another thing too. I mean, again, you don't want to necessarily go the conspiracy route. But after the Ericsson thing, why wasn't there a defibrillator on set or in the stadium or anywhere around it? Because from what I understand, he did fall at the stadium. So I
Yeah.
I thought after the Ericsson thing, that was just a given. So little, I mean, there are questions to be asked, and I'm sure there'll be some kind of investigation into it. But yeah, it's just that was just really really upsetting news to hear because like you said, he was literally tweeting about what a great game he was watching because it was, I think the last tweet was after the second Dutch goal. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I mean, anyways, we'll kind of move on from that because I know your time is short, Jeremy. I just want to ask you pretty much about every game, but I mean, did you have a certain game of a favorite of yours?
Yeah, I was thinking about that this morning. It's just been a. I don't. I'd be curious to hear your guys' thoughts after I speak because it's. I think looking back at the group stage, it was a really good group stage. The group stage 3 had a lot of really good twists and turns. We had at one point Costa Rica and Japan getting through, and Germany and Spain getting knocked out. That was memorable. There were some, the last minute finish with USA and Iran, holding off that Iranian attack. But I think the tournament, we've had some good games. I think the tournament, though, has not maybe played out in the way that I would like. I was kind of hoping, I mentioned this last time, how I sometimes don't want all the upsets. But I was kind of hoping we would get some of these heavyweight battles in the semifinals, maybe an Argentina versus Brazil. I think that was the one that everybody was really looking forward to.
Spain, France, or Portugal, France would have been pretty
Yeah,
spicy.
Portugal, France, another one. That said, the game that actually sticks out to me, and it might surprise you, was actually the Portugal Morocco game. I thought that was, it wasn't the best game of the round, but I was so impressed by the fact that Morocco both kept this. They played a defensive style, a counterattacking style, but they still kept a fairly medium high line, I guess you would say, with a lot of pressing, a lot of defending of the flanks. I think Portugal had a hard time really sending great balls into the box, except maybe from Dallo. But I was just really impressed by their continued performance and collectivity. So that one just stood out, I think, just because of the shock of it. But I guess the other one, I mean, the game probably of the round, though, was the Netherlands and Argentina game, the Great Wall game we just talked about. But that was stunning. It was stunning just how direct the Netherlands were able to be in those final 20 minutes, and Argentina had no way to stop it. It almost made you think, had Van Gaal really just gone with that tactic from the first place, they might have really been out of sight with that game. So those are the two that stick in my head. I'm sure you could pick the other two. I mean, we have Brazil losing to Croatia, which is insane, and obviously the England France game, which is probably the best quality game between two teams in the round. But that was just kind of my take. I'd be curious to hear what you guys think.
Yeah. Rex, what were you thinking the same thing?
Yeah, 100% for me. It was Netherlands Argentina, and it was mainly too just because of all the animosity and all the like trash talk and things like that. I personally really like it. Honestly, it shows how much they care because I know like some people are saying, oh, Messi comes off kind of as like a jerk, but it was like this is him on the soccer field and like he's being judged pretty heavily all the time on his international appearances. So I like it that he's fired up. But and then also this game just had everything. It had a red card. It had an Argentina player blast the ball into the Dutch like bench area, which I've never seen before. That was insane. Like my jaw literally dropped watching that. And then everyone just rushed immediately. And then Van Dijk just plowed into the guy and knocked him down. And then it was one too that like I actually watched like half an hour after the game because it was all these interviews and the Messi interview and Messi yelling at Van Gaal. It was awesome. I mean, this was my favorite by far. Just It had everything. It had everything for me. But I mean, Jeremy, I don't know, and Ben, I kind of feel like I don't know Argentina kind of rubbing it in a little bit. It feels kind of like the Brazil like narrative when they won big, and they kind of were dancing and everything, and then the next game they kind of fell flat after the big victory. So I'm a little worried about that with Argentina. It seems kind of like a soccer god karma kind of cup. So I don't know if that's coming for Argentina here or maybe in the final, but yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed it anyway.
Well, I mean, obviously that was the best like game. I think for the neutral. But one thing that was sticking in my mind was that first game with Croatia and Brazil. Even before the game, I texted to Jeremy that do midfields still matter? And basically, I said if they do, if you think about it, the two best remaining midfields, and maybe Jeremy can back me up or not. I don't know. The two best remaining
No, I
midfields
can't. This is
in
egg on my face. This one. So
in the two,
I want you to talk
the
about
two
it.
best remaining midfields in the like left were Croatia's and Argentina's, and yeah, Jeremy was like, "Well, that's why I think Brazil will be able to go ahead because screw the middle of the field. We'll just go wide." And what's funny is before that night, I actually played Andrew in FIFA. I was Croatia and Andrew was Brazil, and that it basically made Jeremy's thesis, come true at least in the FIFA game. But I think it was just very interesting how Croatia were able to that midfield three was able to basically just absolutely frustrate the hell out of Brazil. And I think what's interesting is I think they did what Spain tried to do, what the idea of what Spain think that their midfield three can do, because Croatia had the ball for like 600 something passes, and it was 90% accuracy. Brazil could not. Like, Croatia didn't offer any kind of threat on goal, but at the same way, they also weren't necessarily just hoofing the ball away. They were just straight keeping the ball as a tactic, and it was just very interesting the way that they were able to do it. And I don't know. I think that was a bit unique to me. I feel like if they wanted to, maybe they could have been a little more inventive, but they didn't need to be. And just it was wild to kind of see that because in my head I was wondering, do midfields matter? And in that instance, they absolutely did.
Yeah, I want to tack on. I think you're entirely right, Ben, because that game stunned me just how much the midfield did matter there. I mean, it, I was amazed. Just this looked like another. There's been a lot of talk in the last couple of days since the loss about whether the fact that Brazil does need to go through some sort of an evolution, a little bit like Germany after after the 2006 World Cup, or I guess actually after the '98 World Cup. I think that was when the DOS reboot was happening. Even though they made the final the following World Cup, but they do seem like they actually have some of these players to play this way. Bruno Guimaraes was on the bench, didn't
Yes.
play at all. Paqueta can pass the ball around really beautifully, but he's asked to be a little bit more of a workhorse on that team because they're stuffing Neymar in the middle of the field. So I thought it was interesting that the conversations, even from the Brazilian side, which they're just the funniest nation because they just expect victory at every cost. But it seems like there is a little bit of a reality creeping in that this European style of possession and positional play is going to probably have to come there for them to compete and win a World Cup because they just can't get there on talent alone
And
by just
sticking
putting the best
and,
10,
and,
10 or 11 players out there. Yeah.
and sticking on that, you look at the other South American team, like I said, their neighbor. Argentina has adopted that because their midfield is basically that right now, or with Enzo, with Alex McAllister, and whoever they're Rodrigo Paul. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I think Argentina. You're right. Almost by necessity, maybe it's a little bit of Neymar, not Neymar, Messi's legs, but they have decided, maybe collectively or intuitively, I don't know what it is. They've decided that this is the way that they are going to win games is by both controlling the ball. I mean, that Netherlands Argentina game was a classic by the second half, but for most of that game, for most of the first half, most of the early second half, it was kind of dull.
I
It
agree.
was
Yeah.
it was a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
it was a
Definitely.
lot of timidness with possession, but I think that's exactly what Argentina wanted. They know that they needed to see this game out, especially after they got that goal that really came from nowhere. Nowhere. We can talk about that, but I think that's kind of the same attitude that Brazil needs to get. I mean, Brazil had that game won, and in the 117th minute, you got Fred running into the corner flag trying to score a goal.
Yes, and he
Uh,
was brought on
yeah,
specifically to like not leave that space.
so it's stunning to me that for a country that rich, still just hasn't figured out that in a sport like this today, you need to defend your leads.
Also, like another thing I was thinking about is, everyone keeps bringing up 2002 Brazil because Ronaldo, Ronaldinho, maybe Rivaldo was in there too. But you also had you had Cafu and you had Roberto Carlos on that team, and it just feels like you need to have fullbacks to do well in this thing. And you looked at who Brazil played in this game; it was Eder Militao at right fullback, and that ended up hurting them. That's where the goal came from. So
Yeah.
maybe you need to work on that too. I mean, was there just kind of sticking a little bit on this? Was there a certain like coaching decision that you guys maybe disagreed with, or maybe a player decision? We already touched on the Brazil game. I know there's something that happened in France that maybe one of you guys wants to bring up.
Oh, well, for
Oh,
me in the France game, I don't know about you, Jeremy, but I wanted Southgate to play Rashford more. He only played 4 minutes.
Mhm.
So it's like, why are you bringing him on for just 4 minutes? Things weren't going that well. They're down 2-1. He's a pacey player. He's in a little bit of form, at least for Man United. I just want to see him play more in this game. You know, he just brings a lot of pace too. I thought it would have been a good move, but he didn't pull the trigger on it early enough, in my opinion. Only 4 minutes. That's not enough time to do anything.
Yeah.
yeah. I think I was texting Ben. I'm a little bit more okay with how Southgate set up his team in this game. I think the actual switch to keeping with the back four. I think there was a lot of people thinking that they were going to go to back five to stymie Mbappe, but I actually think that the back four roughly worked. I think that the issue, and this seems to just be a constant theme with Southgate, is just not knowing when and how to make the adjustments.
Yes.
And you look at the XG for that game. I mean, yes, there's two penalties there, but England, for the most part, outplayed France. But France is very experienced, even with all their youth. They're still got a very experienced team with Griezmann, Giroud in there, and they're able to really do the. They're almost the opposite of Brazil. They're able to see out their victories, and I think Southgate just took so long to recognize that he was going to have to almost change things and almost relinquish what was working for them. The system was getting them
I agree.
positioned, or they were positioned around the box, but he was going to need to take a gamble a lot earlier. And I think Rashford's a great example. I think another example Ben's brought up, and you can maybe talk about that, is maybe bringing some more creativity to the central midfield. He really kept a lot of steel there for way too long, and it seemed like they maybe need to go kind of the Griezmann route and maybe put Grealish there, or Foden could even come inside. But instead, it's like he was so concerned about nullifying France, even when they were down 2-1, that I think it really bit him.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sticking with England. I think another thing could actually just be who he didn't bring. So this is not just his in-game management, but maybe roster selection. I remember thinking in the second half, this entire time, Kane's basically played like 99% of the minutes. It felt like his legs were finally heavy. He was not making the runs that he wanted to. He was only playing in midfield. So what that meant is it was relatively easy for France. You never really had a run in behind, other than maybe when Saka was able to get a couple runs ahead. I mean, you want Kane in the box, and he just wasn't there. And I was thinking, especially after they went down, having someone like Tony as an option, I think would have been
Yeah.
beneficial. Or you had Kalen Wilson on the bench as well, and they didn't get any minutes. Or in Tony's case, he didn't even bring him on. And I
Yeah.
think that maybe ended up showing up a little bit.
Yeah, I'm gonna go in a second, but yeah, the Tony thing is interesting. You wonder if he's taking that second penalty. You know where it's going.
Yeah. So, Jeremy,
Yeah.
before you go, I have a question, and Ben,
Yeah.
this is a question for you too. But do you think Kane should have taken the second penalty? Because, well, I mean, I know he just made one, but he's number one. He's going against his goalkeeper at Tottenham in Yoris, so Yoris kind of knows where he likes to go already. And then he already took one. It's a lot harder to do another one because the goalie can get in your head. I know Kane's really good, but you know it's kind of one of those decisions that if someone else took it, it would be probably a little harder on yours to try to, figure out where someone's going to go versus Kane, who he faces in practice all the time and just took a PK like in the first half.
Yeah, I think I
Yeah.
used. Oh, you go, Jamie. You go first.
No, I think I'm more okay with it than probably the average person. I think Ben's probably said the opposite of me.
Yeah.
I think he's your best. I think he's your best penalty taker. He didn't. I guess crucially to me, he didn't miss it because of Lloris being a great keeper and seeing him every day in practice. He missed it because he skied it. Now I do say, if I was to play the either or thing or whatever, I do think that this kind of comes back to what we were just talking about, which is that like Southgate really didn't put a lot of strikers of the ball up there. I mean, the players that would be like Rashford's a fantastic penalty taker, and he's not on the pitch at that point. Saka, I think, had already come off, and I know we know his penalty record, maybe in major tournaments, probably a bit harsh, but I don't know who would be your other penalty taker in that situation, and maybe that just speaks to the fact that I lack a little creativity, but. I guess I don't have as much of a problem as other people, but
I think
happy to see what Ben says.
No. I think that's right. I mean, in real time, I was wondering that too. You hold the whole Lloris and teammate thing, but at the same time, Kane's going to have to go against him in a shootout, anyways. Or are you not going to let him take a PK in the shootout, anyways?
True.
So having a backup, I think that would have just been way too. Like I said, online, and in that moment, and like Jeremy said, the reason is because he skied it. It's not like Louis saved it. It is possible that it's just kind of a moment thing. I think the weird thing is because his first one was hit so perfectly, it goes in middle net. You wonder how someone with that kind of technique could sky it, and it's just that's what pressure can do sometimes.
Yeah.
Quickly before I go, I'm curious what you guys are going to think about the next two games, and what you think the final of the winner is going to be. And I'll give you mine, but I just want to hear what you guys say.
Oh man, Ben, you go first. This is gonna be hard.
It is hard. I mean, I'm a little concerned. Like you mentioned it, it's going to be probably hard for maybe Argentina to kind of regroup themselves. But at the same time, it does feel like a destiny thing with France and Morocco. I, I'm very interested to see how they're going to get their first goal because first goal is going to be everything that matters. If Morocco is going to be fine having 20% of the ball, they're going to sit with like 11 basically behind the halfway line, and it's not going to be the space isn't going to be there for say Mbappe or Dembele. So you wonder. Morocco could probably frustrate the hell out of France, and then it'll just depend if maybe those tired legs in the last 15 minutes, France can get something.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it'll be Argentina versus France, but this Croatia team, we know they're really hard to beat, and they kind of have people like peaking at the right time in this tournament. Because we talked about like, gosh, how good has their goalie been, Livakovic, and then
Yes.
Gvardiol has been amazing. He's probably going to
Yeah.
be on a big club soon. And Juranovic at fullback, he's a Celtic player. He's probably going to, eventually leave and make Celtic a lot of money. And then you have that midfield, as we talked about. And then Kramaric in the Bundesliga at Hoffenheim is a bit of an underrated striker in the Bundesliga, at least. If you follow the Bundesliga, he's usually in the top 5 Golden Boots. So I think Argentina will win just because I think they have a little bit more talent all over the field, obviously. But it's going to be hard. It could be another PK situation. I don't know, but
I think so. And that's
yeah,
where
you think so too?
that's where I'd be worried. Yeah, because you wonder how they're going to be able to get through that block. Messi is Messi, but Argentina did not have any way other than like the wingbacks with Molina, did not have a way to get past the Dutch back line. And in the second half, you saw that completely die out. I mean, they were really struggling. Now, what's weird is in the extra time, it was flipped. They were the team on the front foot. They all of a sudden found new life. Another thing I'm worried about a little bit is Acuna being yellow carded out, and they're going to have to play
Yeah.
Tagliafico. Tagliafico did not have a good first game for Saudi Arabia. That's the reason why Acuna ended up playing after that. So that could be something to follow.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think I'm going with France. I just think that at some point this Moroccan, I don't want to call it luck, but I just feel like they're playing well. They're giving up a lot of chances. They're playing a lot of minutes, really hard minutes, pressing, playing without the ball. I just think at some point France experienced maybe a Giroud goal, maybe the thing that Portugal couldn't do, which is get their center forward on the ball
Yes.
in front of goal, heading it in. So I think France will ultimately win that game. I thought Argentina. I think I said last week I thought Argentina was going to beat Netherlands with a really scrappy game. I don't know if I was justified. I don't know how, but I think it was a different kind of scrappy than I expected. But I think Croatia is going to win this one, and I think I remember they played each other in the last World Cup. And Croatia was not a very different team, and I just remembered Argentina getting sort of passed off the ball. And I think one concern I have is I don't know how Argentina is going to set up in this game, because I'm worried that they're going to be caught between maybe playing the style they put against Netherlands and playing a back five. And Ben mentioned the Tagliafico Acuna issue. There's also I think one of their other players is also yellow carded out. I can't remember who it is.
It's
But
Montreal, but you figure Molina is going to play anyways.
Yeah.
yeah, but if it goes extra minutes, that might be a concern there. But
Sure.
I just wonder if they're going to be caught between sort of trying to play against a team like the Netherlands, where they're trying to play a little bit more reserve, and also playing sort of a back 4-3-3. And I wonder if Di Maria, in a weird way, might be the decider here.
I was thinking
because
that. Yes.
he was if Argentina is going to see a way through. Ben, you mentioned and Rex, you talked about how they do have a hard time breaking down teams when it's just Messi. So if they can get Di Maria on the field for a little bit more minutes, I think that's going to be the difference. Because if you guys remember the last time this Argentina made the World Cup final, it wasn't really Messi in the knockout rounds. It was actually Di Maria scored at least 2 goals. Really was a decider in those games.
And
so
he wasn't
I
able
think
to play in the final.
That's
he
right.
wasn't even playing the final, crucially. So I think I'm picking Croatia, a bit of self-preservation there, but I think it's going to be another Croatia France World Cup final, which I think would be horrible. But anyway, I got to run, guys. I'll talk to you later.
How about
All right, see you, Jeremy. I think I had Brazil and Belgium when I first did the bracket. I had them too going to the final.
I had Brazil and
So,
Uruguay. I fell when it fell for the Darwin hype.
Uruguay.
I thought Uruguay was very good defensively. Actually, in my defense, Uruguay looked like they were going to be fine, at least getting into the knockout rounds, and then they lost Betancourt, and they weren't able to. That whole midfield looked entirely different once Betancourt went out. The
Yeah.
coach made some weird roster decisions throughout that entire time too. So yeah, I have a heck in my face on that one. I should have believed in Argentina a little bit more than I did. I think I had Brazil, Argentina for the semis.
Yeah.
But
to be fair, because I was the same way. Like I should have had Argentina going farther, but yeah, they don't like necessarily. I mean, I know they got to the final in 2010, but they don't necessarily have the precedent of like being able to win these big international games in crunch time. So
I mean, the
you
weird
know,
thing, the weird thing is, I was worried that their coach wasn't going to be able to adapt because Enzo Fernandez was not a starter coming into this tournament, and frankly, going into this, I think if someone would have asked me that my top 5 midfielders to watch, I would have had Enzo in there.
Mm,
Modric I think would have been one, but
yeah,
I mean, it's funny because it looks like Liverpool is actually really trying to get him, so that would be a dream because I look at this guy like the next Thiago.
mhm,
He's a ball winner, but he's incredibly progressive with his passing. And he has a little wiggle to him. He can carry the ball a little bit. And you've seen with his shots. I mean, he's got a great outside shot on him. Scored a goal and
yeah,
almost scored versus Holland or versus the Netherlands towards the end. His shot hit the post like at the last minute before it. Maybe it
yeah.
wouldn't
Oh
have
yeah,
had.
that's right.
Maybe
Yeah.
it wouldn't have gone to PKs. So
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I actually put in my notes. I was thinking Di Maria might have to be the difference maker too, because people might forget how Argentina won in the Copas. Everyone remembers the great Emi Martinez show in the semifinals, but Di Maria was the one
Yeah.
that got the goal to beat Brazil. It wasn't Messi, and
Mhm.
it has always felt like Messi's never had someone next to him. He has had to do it himself in these finals. Now, a lot of the chances have gone to Higuain, and Higuain hasn't necessarily been able to deliver. Di Maria is someone that can deliver. So you do worry a little bit about his injury, but the fact that he was able to play a little bit towards the end of that second half, or in extra time, I think should give them something to think about. Maybe he doesn't start,
Yeah.
but I do think he should at least come on in the second half. Because
Yeah, he could be a game changer off the bench for sure.
yeah,
At least if he's up for however many minutes he can do, which is probably a decent amount since it's a big game. Yeah, I would imagine.
because it is going to be hard for them to do how they line up. Because if you try to do 4-3-3, Messi is going to have to be your false nine, and in that instance, you're not playing with a central striker at that point. I mean, Julian
Mhm.
Alvarez will basically become your striker, but where do you get the
Yeah.
width from? So I do agree this is not a good matchup for Argentina. This does feel stalematey. At least if they can get it, they can get it into that. And you worry if it
Yeah.
does go to PKs because Croatia has become the masters at PKs, not just this tournament, but that's how they got here in 2018. Um,
Hmm. And that's why I think that's part of the reason why they're comfortable just sitting back too, because they're like, we know we can probably not concede, or at least not concede more than one. And then if we do that, we can probably get into overtime. And if we can get to PKs, we're pretty good at that. We've been through a lot of PKs, so we're comfortable doing it too. Yeah, so that I mean, I think that's why we we kind of don't want Croatia in the final because they can be boring, but it is effective and it works. And if you can't break them down, you're gonna get frustrated. That plays into their hands too. It's kind of parking the bus a little bit,
Spain
but
have to be
they
kicking themselves to see this actually work.
yeah,
Um,
jeez.
2 years, because this is basically how Spain like to play themselves. I think what's
Hmm.
wild is once they finally actually had to go get a goal, they did actually try to be direct. They were able to bring some subs. One thing I want to ask you, because I said usually we have themes. This will actually be a good way to lead off, or transition. Is we usually have themes in these tournaments. I'm going to change what I had written down. So we had the Pep World Cup essentially in 2014, where just the way basically that Bayern that German team kind of played like Bayern Munich, like Pep's Bayern Munich at that point. Um, in 2018, I think it was Euros 2.0. You can kind of maybe
Mm.
just say that because I think after the quarterfinals, just everyone was knocked out, but Europe teams. Um, in this team, I'm gonna go with it's the World Cup of five subs, and you finally saw five subs actually coming out in extra time. You saw a lot of goals in extra time that you don't normally see, or like in stoppage time. Usually
Mm.
those things really are just kind of drowned out, and the fact that they have been added, you don't like that there have been additional minutes. I kind of do because it allows for that.
Mm.
The second
That's
Argentina
true.
goal happened, or the second Netherlands goal happened with 10 minutes, 10 plus in stoppage time, and basically Van Gaal was able to completely change his entire lineup. They were playing a back three. He went to like a 4-4-2 with like two giants to just play hoofball, and it worked. Having the five subs gave a little flexibility with Croatia. The guy that ends up scoring, Blakic, I can't say names. What
I think that's it.
was a sub. Meyer came on. He was a sub. It was a way where I don't think we would have seen this in the past. I think it
Mm.
livened it up a little bit, so I'm gonna go with that.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah, I mean, it is kind of like the World Cup of stoppage time too, but I'm gonna go with I think it's just a World Cup of actual, other countries other than Europe and South America for the most part.
That's a good one too.
Because we had a couple African teams get out of the group, and Senegal and then Morocco making it this far, and then we also had some Asian teams. We had South Korea and Japan
Mhm.
putting up fights and getting into the round of 16. So I think that's a good thing too, just to have I guess more balance in some of these like games because like soccer is catching on globally more than it ever has, and I think we're starting to see it in some of these nations that have always been pretty good, like Japan and South Korea. Like they've been good nations to watch for the most part, but just some of these other countries, Morocco, like a couple of years ago, the only player I knew was like Benatia from Bayern, and that was it. And now they have like 4 or 5 guys that I know and are big time players. So yeah, it's good to see. It's just sometimes at least I get tired of like European domination, and I wish that like I don't, maybe I'm just anti Euros because I want USA to be in something like that every 2 years, so we
W-
don't just have the World Cup as our only big tournament.
Well,
But
that is
yeah, it's
another
nice to
thing.
see like other leagues and nations come and play well.
So I wanna jump on two things you said there, because both those things have been in my mind. Basically, the theme I had in the beginning was, while it's not necessarily a World Cup of just Europe, in some ways it still is, because when you look at the makeup of the Morocco roster, it is a bunch of guys that are playing in Europe now.
But yeah,
It is not just I won't say has-beens or farmers, but it's true professionals, and I remember when we were looking at the Japan roster, a bunch of those guys are stationed in Germany now, and so it does
mm,
feel you have to have your players in Europe, and that's something for us to kind of
yeah,
think about a little bit when we talked about the MLS last week. So that's in the back of my head, and the thing you said,
yeah. I totally agree with that point for sure.
it's either Thierry Henry or Austin Wenger. I think it's Wenger. He wants a World Cup to happen every 2 years. I've
If it's
started
Fanger, yeah,
I've started to turn around to agree with that, because when you think about it, people or the countries in Europe do get a World Cup every 2 years with their Euros.
yeah,
Their Euros
yeah, pretty
are
much.
so much better than any other regional competition. It's more
Hmm.
competition. It's the stadiums are full. It's different, and it's an
Yeah,
unfair
it's covered
advantage.
like the World Cup.
Yes.
Yeah. And the Copa's big, but it just isn't like covered like the Euros. It's not.
It's not
It
nearly
just
the same
doesn't
thing.
feel like the World Cup. Yeah, it's not nearly the same, and you can't really. It's harder to watch on TV. I mean, stuff like that. So yeah, yeah, I completely agree.
And when I mean, because again, this is definitely it's split. It's definitely got split opinions on this. But another thing you think
Yeah,
about, if you're a kid, I mean, one, it's got to really suck to miss this World Cup just because it's happening during school. But say, I remember when the World Cup was in Japan, South Korea, in 2002. Games were on at like
yeah,
5 a.m. for us, or games were on at like
yep.
7. I remember waking up at 7 to see, oh, we were beating Portugal, and then I had to go to school at like the 15-minute mark. I mean,
Wasn't the
that's
final like at 4 a.m.? I think I remember like I believe it was Germany Brazil 4 a.m. and I woke up for it.
right. So it's just, if you had it every 2 years, you could kind of get away with that. You could also move it around a little bit more. Um,
Yeah,
I'm fully. I've moved. I used to be kind of split a little bit on that. I've kind of moved a little bit more in that corner. So
yeah. I mean, I guess for me, one of the negatives, I guess, would be, and I don't know if it necessarily would, but would it lose kind of its prestigiousness because now it's every 2 years instead of waiting every four. But I mean, I don't know. I don't think it would necessarily because I mean, we have the Euros in between the 4 years, so
right,
like it would still be like the same kind of. It just would be you know World Cup again.
and that's kind of another thing too. I mean, you're gonna have people kind of say that. I know a lot of people will be like, "Oh, well, Messi had to wait all this time, and Mbappe is going to be able to get more and more chances." But I'm so tired of comparing generation to generation. It's different. It's a different game from when
Oh
X
yeah,
players played to here. We need to
totally.
stop doing that entirely. We need to celebrate people in their eras.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's a good point because, like, watching the Brazil game, the commentators are kind of saying too that, like, back in like the '60s, no one from Brazil like played where you could really see them, so they would show up to the World Cup and no one knew who they were or how good they were. And that's like a big, that's kind of a big advantage when they come out with these amazing players and no one knows, that they had a amazing left
like
winger or
17-year-old
something like
Pele.
that. Yeah, yeah. So you can't like set up for that. So that like it, you like it's skewed a little bit that way too. So like yeah, like the stats are already skewed a bit. So like yeah, let's do it. Let's just and then, I think weren't there like more games or less games at the World Cup,
It's probably
less
less, a
teams.
lot. Yeah.
So yeah, like all these stats are skewed in a direction already anyway.
And another thing too is like they're already changing the World Cup. They're inviting more teams to be in. Another thing I was thinking of is we're probably going to finally get a Holland versus Mbappe goal race because Norway's probably going to be in 2026 with the added
Yeah,
teams. So
yeah.
they're already
And they got
changing.
yeah,
They're
they
already
got some good
changing the World
players.
Cup. I'm not in my cantankerous stage in life where I can embrace change. So that's change I can embrace. Um, do you want to touch a little bit on the Geo news or just kind of skip it and just go straight to the games?
Oh no, I do want to touch on the Geo news. I don't know. I think it's pretty important. It's pretty
Mhm.
interesting too.
I mean, it was just the whole we even talked about it on the podcast, like on a bunch of these shows. Well, why is Gio not playing? Why is his treatment weird? Why is Ronaldo saying this? Why is Claudia Reyna saying this? And now we finally know.
Mm,
And so I guess to kind of it first started off with Berhalter basically doing an interview with a bunch of people, quote unquote, off the record. But they ended up
mm,
kind of airing it out anyways, and Berhalter just kind of went off on him, saying, "Yeah, I looked. He wasn't training the way we wanted. We possibly had a vote to kick him out, but we had to basically separate him. We were close to right. We were close to like sending him home." And then, after a couple confrontations with some players, after him owning up to it, I guess with his teammates, things were settled. And then once that leaked, everyone was like, "What the hell?" And then now we know Gio's side of the story. Basically, he said Berhalter came up to him before the even tournament started and basically said, "You're going to have a limited role. Just accept it. Be 20 years old and just like be happy you're here." And that upset him apparently, and that's maybe the reason why he wasn't necessarily training as hard. Now, again,
yeah,
there's still a couple. There's just one side, and now we have the other side. Now that is both from their own words, so both could be kind of shading the truth there as well. But I just thought it was weird. I thought it was weird that um, one Berhalter kind of I don't know why there's a reason to even comment on it. regardless if it's off the record or
Yeah.
not. We know that
Hmm.
he's in talks to maybe get an extension or not. I don't think this helps with that. But another thing too is it's not the first time that Berhalter has shut out a player. I can think of what he did with John Brooks. Matt Miazga has gone on record and basically said, Berhalter kind of lied to me or went to the media and told some lies, and I wasn't able to recover from that. Pepe and Pifok have been kind of shut out in similar ways. It's almost like Berhalter's way or the highway, which I don't think is a great way to manage a club. You mentioned something that's really good in another comment that I want to talk about, because I thought maybe France's weakness was Deschamps, and you mentioned I think managing egos isn't a weakness at all, and something like this, or maybe Southgate, is something that I've never really appreciated, and now I really do, where
Yeah.
like their genius or where their credit comes from is being able to manage egos and being able to keep a locker room relatively happy and as a team,
Mhm.
keep the team morale high, while because you could have club cliques, rival clubs, like you mentioned, egos. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
with France players, everyone's
Young kids, egos. Yeah.
yeah,
Gosh.
and it doesn't
Everyone
seem
has an ego with
you don't have
France. Yeah.
any of this coming out in their camps, and so that is worth praising. Where I
Mhm.
sometimes maybe ignore it with Berhalter, that's the absolute opposite.
Yeah.
So he's bad tactically, and apparently he's bad, doing team environment stuff.
Well, yeah, the one thing I'm curious about is I want to know why Greg, before the World Cup, told Reina his time would be limited. I feel like I don't know. I just feel like that's kind of stupid to tell that to a kid that's 20 years old that is playing really well and is a good player, and it's a World Cup. I mean, telling him that uh, obviously he's going to be sulky, right? So I don't know. I mean, and I don't know why he told him that either. I don't know what he based this decision on. Maybe we'll probably never know. Maybe it was because I don't know. He was like coming back
Well,
from
he
the
was coming
injury,
coming
but
from injury. So that's
yeah,
the
it's
only thing. That's if that is it, and Berhalter should have said that. We were trying to manage his
mhm,
minutes because he
yeah,
was coming back from
yeah,
injury. We don't want
yeah.
him to suffer from that. That is actually that's a reasonable defense, but no one has said anything about that. And if
But
it's
honestly, he would still get some more than 8 minutes in the 3 games. You would think,
stunning.
like just to get him integrated into the squad in some like game minutes, like on his injury comeback. But he was already playing for Dortmund too. He just come back, so like I don't know, Ben. I know we're not necessarily buying it. I just think maybe Berhalter just has never liked his attitude. I don't know, but I think
It could be.
yeah, I mean, Greg airing this laundry, and he didn't say Gio by name, but it was pretty
Everyone
quickly
knows. Yeah,
found out.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty. I mean, he just shouldn't have said anything about it. And then Reina and Reina's agent were both kind of like, for this to be leaked is it's not professional. And I think that's basically Reina being like, Greg's not professional, and I think that that bridge is burnt, and then we probably won't see Reina unless Berhalter's not the coach, and that's really disappointing. I would think for one of our better players,
And
better young players, to just not play for us because of one coach.
and you can't say that
It's
because
disappointing.
you can look. We have real life examples. We have John Brooks. We have Pepe wasn't in this, and we think there's been some kind of dispute there. That is insane to me. I mean, frankly, I'm wondering now if Paul Arriola hadn't been hurt after his playoff run, if he would have played instead of Weah. It seemed like Berhalter has
Mm,
favorites, which again
mm,
is not. It's we've been able to get here with him. He's been able to win us a couple dual nationals. It's time for him to go. It's
mm,
time to think of something else. Um,
mm.
and
So I don't.
this is just this is the end of it.
So I don't necessarily mind like Berhalter's Berhalter's tactics of trying to get to like motivate Gio. Like it could have been better, but I just think in the beginning he shouldn't have like taken the wind out of his sails like that so early. And then obviously his huge mistake. And in my opinion, this should probably be why he shouldn't be retained as the U.S. coach. But just to talk about it in public, I know he thought it was off the record, but you talking about it in public like a few days later.
I think
I
he's
mean, that was just stupid, dude. Don't do that.
I think he's
Like,
doing that because people were going after him for his
mm,
selection. So like, why didn't you play him more? And I think he just finally had enough of it, where he was like, "This is why I didn't play the kid more. He's a brat."
yeah,
In,
that's
in, in, in
you can't do that as a coach.
in other
Like, you
language.
gotta.
Um,
Mm,
Another.
One of the quotes. One of the quotes too. Sorry, Ben. I'm gonna forget, but it was pretty damning. It was basically Gio was like, Greg says that we like to keep our like stuff in house, in the locker room, and then he goes and he talks about it out of the locker room. So it
100%.
was kind of like, he needs to practice what he preaches, right?
Yeah. Well, another thing, you want to be Mister, hand down the rules. Oh, you're not going to train. I'm not going to play you. That kind of coach. Then you can all of a sudden turn to Gio Reyna after you're down 2 goals because of your bad planning, because of you playing Ferreira in a game that maybe he shouldn't have played in. Here, Gio, save me. Here, you can have your 45 minutes to come after you're down 2 goals.
Yeah.
I said it was wrong at the time. I said it was wrong after our last podcast. It's still wrong. And
Yeah.
that
Oh,
now with what we
and by
know,
the
it's
way,
worse.
he was like, go in and play with your back facing goal. I know
I
you don't do that,
play in
but
a position we
go
don't. Yeah,
do it.
be basically
Yeah.
he was making him be the hero. Like, I'm going to play you 45 minutes, and if you stink it up, everyone's going to be like, "See, I was right." That in a World Cup, yeah, we don't have to stick with it. You mentioned, let's see how we are for time. Okay, we got a little time. Do you want to go over the games 1v1, or I think we'll start with the England France game. That's probably the longest one we'll spend some time
Yeah.
on.
Sounds good to me.
So let's see. Don't necessarily have to go over every chance, but I mean, France do happen to win 2-1. Goals from Chirmini, Kane with the PK, Giroud, and then Kane missed the PK. England
Yeah.
started with a 4-3-3. So I mean, I was wondering if they were going to do a back five like Jeremy said, and to Southgate's credit, he probably did get the tactics right with Walker, Stones, Maguire, Shaw, Hendo, Rice, and Jude. Hendo all of a sudden getting into the lineup worked in some respects where you're able to get it into the second half, but that was a time when you needed to take the game to France, and I just felt they didn't have any. They didn't have enough progression in that midfield. Jude's a runner; he's not a passer. Rice is a ball-winning duel winner. He's not really a passer either, and Hendo is a passer, but he's safe. He's not going to be
Yeah.
someone that tries to pick something out. So you really only had Kane or maybe Foden to try to pick something out. And if it was Kane or Foden, you only had Saka making runs. And so
Mhm.
it got to a point where England, I think, had a 15-minute stretch to maybe put the foot down, and they didn't. And Southgate didn't do it. Um,
Mm.
with
Yeah, I agree. Well, I mean, like, like, you could have Rice and Bellingham, and then, like you said, a creator in front of them, and you still have like a double pivot behind you in midfield, and you can have like you said, like a creative player behind Kane, and I mean, yeah. Other than that, though, yeah, the setup was good. I really was happy that he finally like was starting Foden too. And then Walker back from injury. It was a big game for him, but he's so fast. But Mbappe was like blowing by him some. It was amazing because Katie was like, Mbappe's blowing by him, and I was like, yeah, and that's Kyle Walker. Like I know he's coming back from injury, but Kyle Walker is one of the fastest players in the Premier League, and Mbappe is like strolling by him at times. But
we'll,
yeah, I agree, Ben. The setup was good.
we'll get to it. Southgate had his masterful Stop Mbappe plan that was super super secret, and it was basically to play Kyle Walker. And basically, the goal that France score on now it wasn't necessarily directly after it, but it did lead up to it. Is when Kyle Walker tries to go forward and make a run, and when Saka loses the ball, he's out of position. But
Hmm.
I don't have to necessarily go there because I have ulterior motives there. But I like what you said too because the 4-3, the three in midfield is about maintaining control in the game. Essentially, you dictate the game, and that you're able to get through the first half, only losing down a goal. You're actually starting to basically dominate a little bit because France was struggling. Your three were kind of were versus there too. Essentially, Chimie
Hmm.
and Rabiot. Griezmann didn't know what to do, and Griezmann's also kind of like small. So any kind of
Yeah.
like second balls, Griezmann wasn't really able to offer a whole lot. So I think that was a time to maybe bring on a Grealish and kind of put him a little bit in there, or maybe move Foden there and bring Rashford on to at least make a run
Ooh,
forward.
I like that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like that.
because France did operate in a bit of a same. They did the same thing that Brazil did. They've stuck to this 4-2-3-1 with Koundé, Varane, Upamecano, and Thierry Hernandez. Upamecano and Hernandez did not have a good game. Um,
Mhm.
Chouamini and Rabiot kind of as the two pivots, and then Dembele, Griezmann, Mbappe, and Giroud basically as like your front four. With you have the cover with Tchouaméni and Rabiot. I do think that eventually that could show up, because Rabiot isn't necessarily the best, the quickest on his feet. And Mbappe is not going to cover on that side. And Teo Hernandez was got at by Saka. So can
Mhm.
someone now on Morocco? I think it's Ziyech that would be on the opposite side. I don't know if Ziyech necessarily has the speed, but that side does seem vulnerable to me. And if it's well, who would be Argentina would be right wing. Maybe it would be Di Maria, and maybe they would be able
Is
to
it?
exploit
Yeah.
it either. Um,
Uh,
but anyways, I mean, the first chance did fall to Giroud in kind of the 10th minute. I just don't think we really saw this enough. But Griezmann is able to get free, carries the ball upfield, passes it to Dembele, who puts it in a dangerous ball in the box that finds Giroud. Only, he has to run backwards to kind of get it. I can't really direct power, but it's kind of the first warning sign for Stones. Stones did not have a good game. I'm going to get to him too. Um,
oh yeah, get.
well, I, I
We
wouldn't have.
knew he was going to be like him and Maguire would be a weak point.
That
So
that is
it's
true.
good when we're right, but it was
But
easy to predict because like the two slow guys.
it's not the guy that I would have expected Maguire to kind of be the peg in that one, and it really wasn't.
Hmm.
It was Stones in this. So I mean, the goal comes basically like we mentioned. From an English point of view, it is a bad goal to give up. It starts with Kyle Walker kind of leaving Mbappe to make a forward run in the French penalty area. Then at that moment, Saka just can't lose the ball, and Upamecano, it does look like he fouls him. To be fair, but at the same time, Saka just can't lose the ball. When Saka loses the ball, he has to foul Upamecano essentially, because when
Yeah.
Mbappe gets the ball down the wing, there's absolutely no one that tries to get tight on him. There's Henderson there, but Henderson, I think, thinks he's going to blow his hamstring if he has to chase Mbappe. So he's just not. He's basically closing down the sideline, but he's given Mbappe all the space in the world to look up, and he's able to find. He's able to find Upamecano that continues to run too. And Upamecano lays the ball back to Mbappe. So now Mbappe is in the middle of the field with space, so he's in a more dangerous area. Declan Rice tries to go down to ground to foul him and misses. He passes the ball to Dembele, and Dembele passes it to Griezmann, who lays it off to Tchouaméni for the strike. And
Mhm.
the ball basically goes through Jude Bellingham's legs. It just everyone was kind of close, late to close off, and it's just it, it was an unfortunate goal, I think, for England to concede, but at the same time, you're at fault for it. So
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Great strike though, man. That was an awesome rip.
I don't know how
And
he
this
got.
is a player that you've been talking about him since last summer before he went to Madrid to even
Yeah,
um
I saw
you've been
him.
talking about this kid.
Well, France kind of it didn't have the best Euros, and then they were able to. They had a Nations League game, so they had a Nations League semi versus I think it might have been Belgium, and then they played Spain in the final. And Tchouaméni was all of a sudden in there. Tchouaméni was just winning ball after ball, and he looked a giant. But he was
Mhm.
also sometimes you can have giants that have like shovels for a foot. He doesn't really have um, he doesn't really have a negative to him, and it is a shame that Liverpool was so close to getting him. Uh, but
Yeah.
yeah, the amount of power he gets is insane because he takes a touch. He doesn't hit this first time. So it is a worldy strike, and I think Pickford kind of sees it late. But I was watching it
Oh
with
yeah.
Andrew. Andrew immediately said Ramsdale saves that, which I thought was kind of funny. Um,
Ooh. Ooh, I
uh,
don't know.
Pickford's a smaller keeper. Pope maybe saves it too. To be fair, but
Ooh. Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah.
um,
Yeah,
uh,
Pope might have with that length because Pickford was pretty close still. So yeah, a couple more inches.
Pickford was close to
Um,
getting it. Yeah.
yeah, I think actually Andrew's right. Yeah.
But I mean, it's just one. I don't think you can necessarily blame Pickford
No, yeah.
for that moment. But anyways,
Yeah,
it
because it
just
went through the legs, so yeah, you didn't see it,
yeah.
but unfortunate.
And anyway, because it goes to the legs, and you could have possibly gotten a deflection from Jude. Jude was close to getting it too.
Mhm.
It was one of those times where we've seen that in this tournament. Guys are just running. Guys are following the ball. They aren't tracking the runner. I mean, both
Right.
Griezmann and Tchouaméni are wide open. Anyways,
Mhm.
then a chance falls to Kane in the 22nd minute. Saka feeds a clever ball past Rabiot. Saka was good in this game. To be fair to him, I
Mhm.
thought Rashford should have
Yeah,
started
he was
over
bright.
him. Um,
Mhm.
and Saka was good. He finds Kane in the box. Kane turns past Upamecano. Upamecano again almost a horror show to be honest. But Kane isn't able to get past Lloris to stop him. And then a chance comes in the 30th minute for Kane as well. It's a potential penalty not given. Uh,
Yeah.
I think I've heard that VAR looked at it, and because they found out that it's not on the line, they can't necessarily call a foul, and that's the reason why there was just absolutely nothing shown. But we never really saw an angle.
Oh. No, yeah, that's true. Okay, that makes sense though.
But it's a foul. It's 100% a foul. I don't know why the ref
Yeah.
didn't at least call it as a foul. The ref did not have the best game, to be honest. So
Ah,
yeah, I mean, Saka forces Hernandez to kind of pass the ball backwards. Kane wins the ball, near the French penalty area, and then Kane has his legs clipped on the edge of the area, and yeah, just absolutely nothing happened. So you get down to the first half. It's not like France were necessarily that great. They had that one opportunity, but really that was kind of it. So it was 1-0, and England was still kind of in it.
mhm. Yeah, and the stats kind of showed that too. England really was probably playing better than France was. It was just that little bit of unfortunateness. Is that a word? Unfortunateness?
I like it. I'll accept it.
Misfortune? There we go. That little bit of misfortune. And that's it. But other than that, they were playing pretty good.
I mean, one thing I noticed is there were like 4 or 5 times where England were actually very good at turning France over. Again, it seemed like their numbers in midfield were to their advantage, but it was going to Saka did not want to take Teo Hernandez or Meccano on, so he was kind of slowing down. And Kane, whenever he would get the ball, didn't have the legs to necessarily try to get past someone either. And that was just they didn't in that moment. You didn't have a way to kind of hit them directly, even though you were able to turn them over. You didn't have a transition threat. And I think that showed up. So again, we keep talking about Rashford. When Kane plays with at Spurs, you have Son, and it's just weird how Southgate didn't realize, hey, we need to kind of do the same thing. Um, but England are able to get a goal back. In the 60th minute with the PK. I mean, Saka was probably the best creator all game, and so it's fitting that he's able to draw the PK. Also fitting because he was maybe a little at fault for the French goal. A little harsh, but you can't lose the ball there. But
Yeah.
he tries to cut back, and Tchouaméni brings him down, and then Kane blasts a perfect PK. To be honest, it was like a picture
Oh
perfect
yeah.
PK. Um,
It was.
and so hearing watching that and then basically hearing someone like in your head he'll sky the next one, I would have bet everything I had on that not happening. um
Yeah, especially after that. Yeah, that PK was so good.
and then chances started to fall to France. This was a weird one. It's just a ball kicked over the top, I think, by Kunde, and John Stones does it just is in all sorts of bother. He Rabiot is able to just basically run onto a free ball, and then thankfully he only he tries to do like an outside the book kind of kick, and he basically hits it right at Pickford. Pickford's able to kind of deal with it, but Rabiot was basically in on goal. It was shocking he didn't try to carry that a little closer, and it was just a long ball over
Yeah.
the top. Maguire, I think, is dealing with Giroud or whatever. It's just John Stones and Kyle Walker, and both are late to react. Um, and then, a chance did fall to England and Maguire. England get a free kick again, thanks to Saka owning Teo Hernandez. The ball is whipped in, and Maguire unmarked. Maguire is unmarked. It's worth saying that. So he gets a good head on the ball. It's a good. I mean, it kisses the post. Maguire maybe could have done better on this, and it was a big chance.
Yeah.
Looking
Yeah,
back,
he was
it was a
frustrated. I
huge
think
chance.
he it was, and I think he thought he should have scored. He should have put that way because he didn't look happy after missing that for sure.
And then right after this, again, it was one of those times where Kane drops so deep. Basically, he's in the midfield. He helps Shaw get the ball, and then Shaw finally takes a run forward. One of the few times that Shaw was able to get forward. Shaw crosses across the ball, kind of across goal, and it looks like Saka is there. It looks like he's beaten Upamecano or Hernandez, and somehow Hernandez is able to draw a foul. It's actually really good defending by him in this moment because I thought for sure this would either Saka hit it out of bounds or it was going out for a corner kick because Hernandez had kicked it out, and instead it was given as a foul. But that was another one of those moments where you needed Kane to be in the box for that Shaw cross. I thought.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and maybe if he had like a number 10 behind him, he wouldn't have to drop and be like the creative player because you'd have like I don't know, like Gallagher or Mount or someone, or like you said, Foden
that's a good point as well.
back there, and you wouldn't have to necessarily drop back, and you could have him as a target man because I mean he is a target man. Like he's big and tall and good in the air, and he's not necessarily fast. So like kind of just want him to play like Giroud up top,
I mean,
not not dropping back.
I'm
But
absolutely done with false nines, to be honest. After this, even though I follow Liverpool, and Firmino is basically like the prime example of a false nine. Sometimes you basically do
mm,
it because you have a midfield that's just basically about winning the ball back, not necessarily being creative. Your false nine is your creative
mhm,
guy. But
yeah. So
I want a striker in the box more than being someone to help with build up. So
yeah, yeah. That's what he's like. In my opinion, that's what he's there for. I want you like right on the back, the last defensive player, basically, like stretch that field for us.
yeah, yeah, because it's relatively easy for CBs to kind of do that. And if you're not going to stretch them back, you know what that does? That allows the back line to creep up a little bit, and that makes it harder for your midfield. So yeah, there are two reasons why that backfires. But basically,
Yeah.
after that soccer chance, France wakes up, and France gave England a little warning sign with Giroud both times. Um, First comes from Teo Hernandez cross that Giroud heads the ball out of bounds, but he wins the header over Shaw. If that's on goal, Pickford's probably having a trouble saving that. And then the second comes from Dembele, kind of putting a ball back, basically heading the ball back towards Giroud, and Giroud kind of gets like a bit of a volley on it, and it's a good save. It's close to Pickford, but it's a good save. But again,
Mhm.
John Stones is caught napping on this. And another thing that's bad is on this. This basically this leads to the goal, the corner kick before they score. But before this, Mbappe is basically he's on the sideline and he just goes by. It's either Jordan Henderson or Kyle Walker for fun, and Mbappe is able to get the ball to I think Dembele or Rabiot, and then Rabiot gets the ball to Dembele. But they weren't able to. That's the time when you want to get tight on someone. I don't care how fast they are. If you
Yeah.
give them space, they're going to, especially with someone with the pace, they're going to exploit it. So and that happened.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think that was Kyle Walker just getting that was one of the ones that sticks in my mind about Mbappe blowing by him. And you're right, he wasn't tight to him at all.
Yeah, and so I mean the goal does come from this corner kick. England do well to defend the first ball, but France win the second. Possessions recycled. Griezmann gets the ball again, and he does what basically England were not able to do, able to get some quality on a delivery. And it's a pinpoint cross that Giroud's able to beat Stones and Maguire on. I think the ball actually comes off Maguire, so it's unlucky in that respect. But Stones again, I do not understand what he's doing. And yeah, and he just beaten by someone better in that at that moment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's exactly right. And I mean, Giroud too. He's putting on a pretty good show for his age. Um, he's up there for the Golden Boot. I know, like, wow, probably Mbappe's gonna win that. He's got it locked up. But to see, two players up there in Golden Boot for the same team, they're tough to stop, and they're two like different players too, which is it makes it even harder. One's pacey and one's tall, strong, good in the air.
You know what's funny is I think he notoriously did not. He's basically started in all the games in 2018. Like this was supposed to be Benzema's World Cup, coming into this, and
Yeah.
Giroud's always kind of taken a back seat to that. I
Mhm.
think Benzema. I don't think Giroud started in Euros, and it's just funny because Giroud being in the glue kind of makes sense, but at the same time he didn't score for them in 2018, and you're right. He's really helping them in this tournament. And another thing too is looking back, is he maybe the de facto striker of the era? That'll
Ooh.
maybe be a discussion. Like, everyone will look at Lewandowski and whatnot, but
Right, right, right.
this will be hard to kind of ignore. He doesn't have the Champions League success
Yeah.
necessarily, but
Mhm.
yeah,
But I do kind of, like when you said Lua, I do kind of think like, yeah, Zlatan, Lua, and him all kind of like come to mind as kind of, yeah, the atypical like striker only needs one chance, clinical kind of, but not fast necessarily, but yeah,
no, just
yeah, or
just just
maybe
a
like
target
Mueller,
man. Yeah,
target man,
a
yeah,
finisher.
target clinical finisher,
Yeah.
yeah, and those are the best guys probably if you look at like finishing percentages, and they drop back and hold up the ball, but they're not dropping as much as Kane. They're staying up as target guys.
Yeah. Because I mean, I'll actually get to it maybe a little bit later on. But one of the things I used to talk about with Jeremy is I wonder what Barca just for an experiment, just like one season, what Barcelona would be like with a Giroud, just in just someone when in those games when like they're against they're against blocks, and one way to kind of beat a block is to just go wide and cross balls in, and he's been so good at winning headers all his entire career.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is fitting that he's having his moment. He's getting his flowers. Um,
Yeah, because like you mentioned too, he's been kind of unselfish, like taking the back seat, like at club level too for a little bit.
mhm, yeah.
Like I think he was kind of underrated at Arsenal, honestly. So yeah, like he's good. He's good at what he does.
And so England after that weren't really able to create a whole lot. They were able to get a big chance though because of Mount. Mount finally came on. Southgate finally started to make some changes. He waited until they went down a goal to do this,
Mhm.
which I think there was a 15-minute stretch where they were dominating, where he could have maybe won this, and he did this a little bit. I thought in Euros versus Italy. And yeah, I can't recall what they did versus Croatia, but I remember a lot of people getting on him for
Yeah,
that too. Um,
yeah.
but
He's not being proactive.
right,
He's just waiting for things
yes,
to happen.
that's a good way.
Yeah,
That's a good way to put it. I mean, so Bellingham has time and space on the ball. He looks up. He's able to play a good long ball over the top to Mount. Finally, someone makes a run. Makes a run for France to kind of think about, and Mount does well to get the ball, and he's bulldozed by Teo Hernandez. I don't get why Teo Hernandez is doing this, and yeah, on the ensuing PK, it took a while for this to actually be rewarded.
it did.
Kane
Yeah. I didn't know if it would be.
maybe that kind of messed with his head. And then Kane, it is weird how Kane went the same way. But
Yeah.
again, the whole like Louise knows what he does, and he knows the whole routine. It does feel like Louise got to his head a little bit, and yeah, it's just stunning to see how someone that hit that first PK was able to do that for the second. But
Yeah, not even hit the top. I think what happened, I think, is that Lloris kind of guessed right while Kane was going, and Kane
and he
changed
freaked
his
out.
mind like mid kick, yeah, and
Could
tried to
be
go the opposite way, and then I guess his footwork was a little off. But yeah, I was that was shocking. That was another one, a moment where my jaw hit the floor because I was like, yeah, I would have bet a lot of money that Kane would have buried that second PK after he just destroyed the first one, but. Crazy, man. This is why we love soccer.
well, another thing too is like at least for the first one because I did rewatch it pretty harshly. You guess yesterday, Kane is looking down. He's not really looking at the ball. Or he's not looking up. I don't necessarily know if he necessarily does that for the second. Maybe he looks up at the last minute. But to keep that focus on Messi, I noticed for that Dutch PK I guess for both of them. Uh, he's looking up. He's got his head up, which I don't think he used to do that. And it's almost like
Hmm.
if you're going to be a main spot taker, maybe you have to have your head up the whole time. Um, I don't know. It's just something to maybe think about. And then
Well, I used to
Rash.
hate it when they didn't like when they would just stare like middle and not look at a corner because I was like, I can't get a read on this guy like early. At least I have to like wait to see his hips.
Interesting. Okay.
But yeah, or sometimes too, someone would kind of like glance to the left and you'd be like, oh, I think they're going left. And then they would look left the whole time, and then at the end they'd go right, and you'd be like, "Crap!" So that was in your head too, but
I would always do the stutter and then kick, but I never had to do it actually in a game. Probably
yeah,
thankful because I
no,
tell my
we didn't do many PK
my
shootouts or get many PKs.
my whole thing was hitting it too high at times. Uh, I mean, basically, last chance does finally fall to Rashford. For some reason, Southgate was like, "Oh, finally, I'll bring on Rashford." Like you said, 4 minutes. Brought on Grealish for the last 2 minutes, which is weird.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
they were
mhm.
able to. I think it's Maguire that's able to draw the foul, and then Lloris gets lucky here, to be honest, because Lloris tries to cheat wall side, and Rashford just puts too much power on this. I think if this is on
Oh,
target,
it was
it's in.
close. Ooh. Yeah, I
Um,
think it was so
but
close.
because
Ooh.
Lloris is not getting there at all, because Lloris again
Mhm.
tries to cheat wall side, and yeah, it's a
So
great.
close to perfect.
It really was. And if they were just a little further back, I do think that's going in. One thing that's annoying to me is I don't like the idea of teams being able to have someone lay on the ground because it does allow your big guy, Upamecano or whatever, to jump up. Or Chouameni, I think is like 6'3", and he's able to also jump. I think he should be punished for jumping, and which is funny because Holland actually kind of did that. Um, so I mean that's pretty much it. I mean, you mentioned the stats. The XG was 2/2. France was 1. The shots were 16 and 8 to France's 8 and 5. And then the possession was interesting. The possession was 57% and to France's 43. And that's kind of the main thing I think I'm going to focus on is this wasn't like with Italy. This wasn't like with Croatia, where England were just basically holding on for dear life. It felt like they were being thoroughly outplayed, and they were just kind of they were just hanging on. In this one, they felt at least equal or sometimes superior in some respects, and so I think it's worse in that manner where you had a real chance here, and because of Southgate's
Yeah.
weird decisions or weird conservatism, I guess I would say he's so safe. I think it really
Yeah.
did backfire. You can get to this level in a tournament by playing safe, and it has worked.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, and I
you've got
think
to take
that's where he,
risks.
like yeah, and I think that's where he went wrong. Like, I would call it, yeah, conservative for sure. That's, like, the spot on word for it, and, but, the thing is, like, it has served him well
It
in
has.
previous games, but I agree, like, that's the one thing, like, it'll get you so far, but eventually you do have to go for it, and that's probably why they didn't, they haven't won anything, and they've been close to it. I mean, PKs too is a problem, or, PK shootout too is a problem, but, yeah, I think that's right, Ben. I think he's just too conservative, and it will get you pretty far with a good team, but it won't get you all the way there.
Because I mean, you looked at how France had like a Griezmann that was able to find some pockets and was able to play forward passes. Now France were losing second balls in midfield, and they weren't necessarily able to get control of that second half. But when France did have the ball, they were able to do things that England just weren't. I mean, you looked at that midfield three, and there wasn't a progressive passer in there. And I think if anything, England need to find that. England need to find a Thiago if they can before the next World Cup, or you need to play with a 10 because
Yeah,
or basically you rely on Kane becomes that, and you play with a Rashford up top.
yeah.
That's the only way you can make it happen. You can make it work.
Mhm.
Um,
And yeah, that'd be interesting because obviously everyone's going to be older. Kane's going to be older, but I'm looking at Giroud, and Giroud and Lou are old, and so I think Kane can still do it.
Kane doesn't
But
rely
yeah,
on his
maybe
pace.
him
I
being
think he
older.
could do it. Yeah.
No, yeah, yeah, he does because he doesn't have any pace, so that's not. Yeah, that won't go away. And being tall and physical in the air, that'll stay for a while. But yeah, like we want him up more. We don't want him coming back. And if he's older too, maybe he won't be able to. But yeah, man, I don't know. Maybe it's a new guy. Maybe the answer is, like, I don't know, Gallagher in the future, or Mount. I don't know.
I don't. I don't think so because Gallagher and Mount are like energy guys, and you saw that backfire at least for us.
Mm,
You tried playing Mount in that kind of role, and that's the reason why he ended up going back to Henderson. Henderson was able to be there for the they call it ball it's not progression, build up, second phase build up, where you're not from the goalie, you kind of you're trying to get the ball to the final third. Henderson helps with that, or helps actually when the back line's trying to build the ball up, because he'll drop deep and he's good at
mm,
receiving the ball. Just his issue is once he
yeah.
gets in the final third, all he knows how to do is cross the ball. Um, so, I mean, but you had players on the roster that I think could have done a job. Jamie Madison did not get any kind of playing time, which is insane to me. Trent Alexander.
Well, yeah.
So, so the two things I'm going to
Trent
say is
Alexander.
England struggled when it came to final ball, final crossing. The crossing was very poor, I thought, and they didn't have any kind of like creativity in the midfield. And you had
Mm,
Madison and Trent just right there. You could have brought
yeah.
on after you conceded. The whole stop
Did,
Mbappe plan doesn't matter after you've conceded.
mm, yeah. Especially after you concede two. Did Trent didn't play a single minute, right? Did he get in any
He
games?
played he played a little
Maybe
bit versus Wales after they were like up
versus Wales,
up
right?
3-0. But that was pretty much
Gotcha.
it. Yeah.
Gotcha.
The
Yeah, that
feeling
was kind of
the feeling
disappointing.
of him was weird. But it is what it is. I
'Cause I
think
get, like, he's been, like, getting some grief for defending at Liverpool, but you can't deny the attacking quality he possesses. And yeah, like, some of those, like, USA stalemate, throw him on. Like, go for it.
and that's just ultimately where they end up falling out is they didn't have Southgate did not know what to do after they conceded. Um,
Mhm.
to kind of move on, I guess we'll talk a little hot a bit this game. We'll just kind of oh well. Um, to touch on Harry Kane, again, I'm going to actually ignore a little bit of the PK. I mean, a lot of people can kind of do that. I think we've already mentioned it. Southgate needed to recognize Kane needs a son ahead of him. Saka was very, very good in this game, but you saw that right side being vulnerable, and I think Saka was very good at getting the ball and then drawing fouls, but he wasn't really a guy. Saka was also looking for the ball. He wasn't trying to make a run ahead. So I think there was a missed chance there. But two, it's just Kane was dropping way too deep to receive the ball. I didn't like that. I didn't like that when he did that for us.
Mhm. Yeah, I never like it when he does that.
And just kind of to share a moment on him, I do feel bad for him. He does seem like a good
Yeah.
dude. He's never really been a dick at Spurs. And one thing I do the one thing I do kind of hate about club mentality or like fandom is everyone there's a lot of elitism. I guess you could say like, oh, you have to leave
Yeah.
Spurs to win a trophy. There's just been a whole lot of that, and so like Spurs fans have been able to actually have someone that's been loyal their whole time. And it's gonna suck that if he's only remembered for this. Um,
Yeah. I think he's a very professional player. Like if you think of a professional athlete, like this is him. He stays out of the headlines and just goes about his business and focuses on the sport. And it looks like he's a guy that like doesn't go out and like party. He's not necessarily like flashy like a Grealish. So yeah, like I agree. He's a very likable player, very professional, and I mean loyalty too in this day and age, it can be bought for like mountains of cash, and he's loyal to Tottenham so far too. So yeah, I feel bad for him too, Ben.
and we think he
Like
wanted to.
he's a good player and a professional,
We think
good
he wanted to
professional.
go to City the year before they got Holland.
Hmm.
And that was maybe a little blip, but after the season started, he showed up to training. It's not like he stopped doing that, and
Yep.
he carried on with the season. He had a fantastic season that
Yeah,
year.
and he wasn't sulky. Yeah, yeah, that's just the professionalism in him. And even if like he was going to leave, let's say, in a month, he'd still give his all for that month. It wouldn't be like, oh, I'm leaving. I don't care anymore. So yeah, like that is disappointing. It was sad to see him like because he gave 100%. He's absolutely gutted on the field. Like I always hate seeing that. He's basically on his haunches there, like crying. I hated to see that because
Yeah,
he
I
is a
wanted
player that just he's given everything, you know?
For England to lose. It would have been nice if it was just like another mini strike or something like that. Not
Yeah, yeah,
not
yeah.
for
Not a
someone.
came
Yeah,
miss PK. Yeah.
and because
Yeah, I completely agree.
it's not like like the miss PK happened in like I don't know the 45th minute or whatever. It was within like 15 minutes to go after you're already down a goal. Um,
Yeah. He was really hoping one of his teammates would, like, bail him out and score. So at least if they did lose, it wasn't,
right,
like,
losing
his
extra
fault.
time. Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah.
I was kind of the same way. Um, what's kind of funny? So we mentioned about like the idea of maybe a Winter World Cup. I mean, two World Cups. What's funny is because we have a Winter World Cup, the Euros are actually really close. To be honest,
Yeah.
it's like a year and a half now,
Year and a half. Yeah, it's
and so
crazy. And it's the shortest distance
a lot
to
of
the next
these,
World Cup at 3.5.
a lot of these, it might be in. Oh, I don't know about it. Right, we're hosting. Um, Euros, I think, are in Germany. Anyways, what I was thinking of
Nice.
is a lot of this roster is probably going to be the same. Um, you feel like they're still in that quote unquote cycle, so they still have a chance to win a trophy with this golden generation. But I'm gonna say, other than Pickford, maybe Henderson. Who would you like to maybe see to get a look at for that 2024 squad?
Oh, man. Well, I don't know, like, it's tough to say, but,
Hmm.
I mean, maybe Callum Wilson if he's actually like not hurt. I know he made the team, but maybe he could be someone that you could actually like give Kane like a little bit of time off
Hmm.
in the group stages, and so he's like 100% to go in these bigger games. That would be nice. Someone to take the burden off. Tony, I don't know with like the betting thing. I don't know. I have no idea what his future is going to be.
Oh, I
Um,
entirely forgot about that when I brought him up earlier.
yeah, yeah, I don't know. And then I don't know. It is going to be talented, like because you got a bunch of goalkeepers. The goalkeeper situation could change. That could be like Pope or Ramsdale's job maybe in 3.5 years. I don't know. I mean, yeah, obviously no Henderson. I don't know about Sterling. He's not playing well at City, but anything could happen there. Yeah, it's going to be it's center back too. Yeah, I mean, you can't. You're
I
probably
think
not
that's
going to
an
go with
issue.
Stones and
Yes,
Maguire. Like, so who's going to be center back? I mean, I guess what's that guy's name? Like Colville.
I put
He's
him.
someone that's young and
Yeah,
talented, and maybe him. Yeah, maybe him. I don't know. That's going to be interesting to
you
see. And
could
then
lean on
obviously,
Ben White maybe or
manager too.
Adam Webster.
Ben White, maybe.
Adam Webster at Brighton
Oh, Webster.
is a good player. Um,
Yeah, huh. That's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. I mean, I somewhere Madison has to find a way to get into the squad. I think
Yeah.
otherwise, maybe try to play Grealish. Just you got to find a way to get a passer, a bit more of a passer in that. I think Henderson's going to be out, so you can make Jude be that RCM kind of spot.
Oh yeah,
He can make runs ahead. So
yeah,
I
you
don't
have
think,
that locked down.
yeah. So
Yeah, I would like to see Madison as their 10 because when he's healthy, he's really good for Leicester.
at least in the for the numbers, maybe Kane, I guess, actually hasn't been for at least he's been the most creative. He's been the most contributed to goals and assists in the league, at
Ooh,
least for an English player. I think other than Kane, for the last 2 or 3 seasons.
okay.
And
Yeah, and he's
it's
not
not
a
even
striker.
close.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like them two, and then a huge gap.
And so we talked about it a little bit, on the French side, all this talk about Mbappe coming in, but it's Giroud and Griezmann that are kind of the difference maker. And what's funny about Griezmann is he's kind of been a lone song hero in this case too. In Euros 2016, he was actually like the star. He was like the guy, and he's kind of taken a back seat a little bit in that respect. But he's always showed up for France. And what's funny is we kind of forgot about him with him kind of being at Atletico Madrid. But it seems like that's a club
Mm.
like Juventus that's kind of that's just not not a place to be, club wise. But he always kind of shows up, and it's really his ball in the end that's the difference.
Yeah, it was amazing, and yeah, he's been kind of drifting around clubs recently, and hasn't necessarily been like playing his best. But yeah, it seems like France. Anytime to put on the France uniform, it just kind of like re-energizes, rejuvenates him, and like maybe this can kind of get him more club minutes or bust him out of his slump, or maybe maybe he'll move in January because most of the time these World Cups, there's players where their stocks go up, and it's the summer window, and you can kind of go out and buy them. So now they got the January window, so they can still go out and buy some of these guys. So
Hmm.
there is maybe he can play into form, and if he does want to leave Atletico, maybe someone will pay a little bit more for him, and he can actually leave. Things like that. So it's gonna be it's interesting. Everything just being in the winter, it's weird, man. It's so
It
weird.
is. It is. And what's funny is, you mentioned of Atletico. There's another club that's maybe looking at one of their stars. At least if that rumor is true. With Felix.
Yeah, I don't know. Ooh,
But with Gabriel, with the Jesus news, Arsenal might need to think of something like that. Even though
yeah,
that would be rough
definitely.
because I don't know if you could play Felix and Jesus at the same time. So that would be.
Yeah, I don't know.
I
And
told I told Andrew this is what I would do. So I'll just kind of get that out there. I would play Gabriel Martinelli kind of in the middle, which I think he can do. He's shown he can do, and I would get Mudrick, because it seems like you don't
gosh,
really
I hope
have
so.
a second left winger behind
Yeah.
Although I guess maybe that's supposed to be Smith Rowe, but that's kind of what I would do. But anyways,
Yeah, I don't know. Smith Rowe can play like anywhere too, but I'm not. Ugh, he's supposed to be back sometime in December, but I don't know. I'm not
oh,
convinced that
that's
he'll
better.
be.
Oh, I thought it was February.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's
Oh,
not that
was
bad.
it? It could be February. I'm not convinced he's going to be up and running till springtime, probably like
Hmm.
hitting
Yeah.
playing where he should be. So yeah, I think they do need to buy someone because you got like Nelson, but he's only played in a couple European games, Europa League games. So
I forgot
I
about
don't
that.
know. Yeah, I think they need to
Good.
buy someone though
Good
because
call.
they can't go 3 to 4 months without Jesus, in my opinion.
I think so.
And KJ can do a job for like a little bit, like we saw him last year, but not for that long. So I think they do unfortunately need a dip in, and I think prices are going to be high because it's January and it's inflation from World Cup. So I think they're going to have to spend a lot of money if they want someone with the quality like Mudrick is going to be demanding a hell of a price, I'd imagine.
Hmm. Yeah, sure. I mean, just to kind of stick on fans. Um, one thing I kind of put on my notes is, do you think is maybe a concern that they were outworked in that second half? Because when you look at what's remaining in front of them, um, Morocco can play with a three-man midfield. Argentina and Croatia do as well. And so, is there a possibility where Deschamps playing this 4-2-3-1, a bit like we saw with what Brazil play with, where sometimes you can be outnumbered 3v2. Do you think that's maybe
Ooh.
something for them to think about, or is it
Yeah.
just it won't be an issue? Mbappe will kind of be a star, or Dembele or whatever.
Gosh, I mean, it's so hard to say. I have no idea. You would think maybe, you could kind of beat the Moroccan like block by with those players, but I could also see like Morocco being just incredibly hard to break down, and you can't, Mbappe's maybe not getting space, and I could see the France players kind of like really getting frustrated and possibly even like turning on each other a bit. So I don't know. I could see like both scenarios happening.
Hmm.
I don't. It's tough to say, but I don't know. I think it'll be definitely France like pinning them back for sure. But Morocco might be okay with that, and they do have players that can counter. And you talked about like Teo Hernandez. He could be a weak link that you could attack, especially if he's pushed up, because they're going to get their fullbacks pushed up if they have so much of the ball. So yeah, I mean it's going to be interesting. Ziyech might be able to counter. It's gonna be fun to watch. Hopefully, I mean I hope Morocco at least is like intriguing on the counter, because they can be kind of, I mean, rightfully so, they gotten this far, but they can be kind of boring to watch sometimes.
They can. Yeah, it's not like Croatia, where Croatia they did not play attacking football at all, but they also kept the ball as kind of like their
Yeah,
like
like they have it
defensive.
in the midfield at least.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it was at least still watchable. Morocco really do kind of sit in a block, sitting deep. And I think one
Mhm.
thing that's kind of funny about them is I think I put don't judge a book by its cover, or don't judge a book by or don't judge a team by what they do in friendlies, because we destroyed them back in the summer. I think it was 3-0,
Yeah.
and it might have been actually that might have been what fired their coach, because they had a little player issue too. Zia,
Yeah.
he wasn't playing with Ziyech, and
Mhm.
lo and behold, this new guy's come in, and Ziyech back, and I don't think they've lost. They don't concede.
Yeah, they don't
They just
concede.
sit in a block, and it's
Yeah.
really annoying.
It's a smart move though. Like that's what I
It is.
immediately do
Yeah.
too. I'd be like, Ziyech, come back, man. We got you. You're, you're one of our best attacking players. Like, yeah, we need you. Come back.
Well, one thing that's true is like all of them are they don't have many passers, but a lot of them are very good at running with the ball. Um,
Mhm.
and it does feel unique. You don't see that as much these days. A
Yeah,
lot of
that's
like
true.
it's almost like a European thing where like you're taught you don't have more than three touches before without passing to a teammate. Morocco, wherever someone is, they'll carry the ball. All of them will.
Mhm.
I
Yeah, that's
mean
true.
that is interesting. Now, if you lose it, then you're oh. But anyways, let's see. Are you still good for time? What are we at? I mean, it was just one
I
game, so
got about 15 minutes.
okay. We'll cover the Argentina Netherlands game then. We won't necessarily go over exactly what happened. I mean, this is 2-2. Goal from Molina with a Messi assist. It's a very good assist. He Messi
Gosh,
basically
yeah.
does a through ball through the legs of Ake, and then Messi gets a PK. I thought it was very soft. But one thing that was interesting was the goal from Molina with a wing back, and then the PK was drawn by I think Acuna. So you saw the other wing back that was able to give Netherlands kind of fits, and then out of nowhere, Ranghorst or Van Gaal decided enough of this. You've got you've got Otamendi and Lisandro Martinez defending your penalty box. I'm gonna get my horses in there. I'm gonna get my towers in there, and that's basically what they were able to do. Wanghorst wins a header over. I think it is over Martinez, and Martinez has no shot to even get
Mhm.
close to it. And then they score the most cheek free kick goal I think I've ever seen. Um,
Oh yeah.
and it's funny because it's insane to try this at the very end, because even before this, I think it's either Copenminers or it's Berghaus that has a free kick that's very close to going into. I think it draws a save. So you
Hmm.
maybe be thinking about that, but what they do is they create a fake wall, and so
Mhm.
Argentina already have a wall, and then you have already have a guy sitting down, and so when they are able to make their fake wall, what they're doing is De Jong's able to shield Messi. So it is Enzo Fernandez versus basically either Luke De Jong or Wanghorst. And I mean, Enzo, I like him a lot. He doesn't have the body to handle basically taking those two guys on himself. And so, Holland were able to kind of, or the Netherlands were able to play a little bit of a percentage game, and it worked. And they would
Yeah, that was cheeky.
able to get
Because
the,
you think
no,
Oh, sorry. I was
uh,
just gonna say you think that they're gonna just blast it at their own player and he's gonna like duck out of the way
right.
and the keeper's gonna have
Yes.
to make a save, but instead you pass to that player. And I've seen after that I've seen, I forget what team it was, but they tried it too, and it doesn't come off, it looks really stupid and it's
Mhm.
harder than it looks. But yeah, that was amazing.
And so, they're able to get it to extra time out of absolutely nowhere. I mean, this happened in like the 90 plus 10. So, Rex doesn't like the 10 minutes. I do. Because we get
Yeah,
to
oh
see
here I loved it.
we
Yeah.
get to see stuff like that. And then extra time was wild because Argentina was basically absolutely suffering for that last 15 minutes plus 10. It felt like they didn't have any way to counter. They didn't have any way to push them back. And in the extra time, it was entirely different. It felt like Argentina all of a sudden got new life. They were the team on the front foot. They had 7 corners in that second extra time, which is wild.
That is
Um,
wild. That's like more than like you get in the whole game.
they had 8 for the whole game. So they had
Jeez.
so and it felt like if a team was going to score before it went to PKs, it was going to be Argentina out of nowhere, which you wouldn't have thought the way the game kind of ended. So we'll kind of
Yeah.
start. I mean, and then it went to PKs, and Emi Martinez reminded us all he's an absolute beast at PKs. Um,
Mhm.
and
Oh
so
yeah.
yeah, I mean, what was your takeaway for this game, Rex?
Man, I just love this game because I mean it was great that the Netherlands were able to come back and we saw like a feisty overtime and we just saw like feisty PKs and emotions boiling over and just like crazy tackles, booting the ball at the Netherlands bench and coaches yelling, Messi yelling, the taunting after Argentina won. Kind of, I think you've seen the pictures of Otamendi in particular, but they're turning to run to Emmy and they're turning at the Netherlands team dejected and they're making like faces at them and things like that, which I think will come back to bite them. But it's very good entertainment. And like I said in the beginning, I watched the 30 minutes after too because you have Messi yelling at the coaches. You have Messi's press conference where he's like, "What are you looking at, clown? Like, go away."
You're right.
It was amazing, man. I want more of this. I want more. It's awesome to see just people being like badass, I guess,
The
and
Dutch.
just especially Messi. He seems like buttoned up and things like that. It was fun to see his like attitude.
Well, it's almost like they had they had someone plugging into what like the Dutch media were saying, like a bunch of like former players. There's like an Ajax account that a lot of people like kind of follow to like see what they're saying, and he'll like post like a
Ah.
basically a clip, or he'll post like a still picture, then like what someone's saying, and they were all
Ooh.
really cocky going into this. So I don't know if maybe
Mm.
Argentina like players kind of found out. I mean, it's players everyone recognizes like Van de Velde or Van Persie,
Mm.
players like that, or I think Van Basten was saying stuff like that, being like, "Oh, we'll
Right.
dominate Messi." Van Gaal was being like, "Oh, they're gonna play a back three with us. Well, they'll struggle because we play this like it's our life, and they'll basically he Van Gaal was just kind of poking at a bear too."
Yeah.
So I think maybe that was what Messi was kind of talking about. It is interesting that
Yeah. I think Van Gaal said they weren't that like, oh yeah, if we go to PKs, we're comfortable against Argentina in PKs. We don't think they're that good.
oh no.
Yeah.
I mean, another thing that's interesting is Van Gaal was the one that blanked. He was the one that switched to a 4-4-2, and it was interesting to see Argentina go to a back three, and it worked. I thought the Netherlands were not good at either creating a turnover or really creating any kind of danger at all. It felt like Van Gaal maybe got this wrong because he played Gakpo in that 10 role like he did versus us in that second half,
Mm.
and it was Bergwijn and Memphis. Bergwijn was not good. Bergwijn again is
No.
more of a offensive guy as a winger, and it didn't feel like Gakpo was able to necessarily get on the ball as much as maybe you would have wanted. And it was relatively easy for Argentina for their back three to pass the ball without being pressed. And
Yeah.
there weren't many turnovers. I mean, the shots were 6-2 for the Netherlands. Argentina was 14-5. Now that Holland had or the Netherlands had a little bit more possession, but not really.
Yeah.
But the thing that was interesting is Argentina had 38% in the second half. It seemed like their legs
Ooh.
had passed them. And one
Yeah.
thing I noticed was, I mean, it was a lower pass accuracy for both sides, and we saw with Brazil and Croatia. Both were 83%, and those were both at like 89, which I thought was
Yeah.
interesting. But yeah.
England was at 87 too, so yeah,
Mhm.
that is interesting. Hmm.
And so it does feel like Van Gaal kind of played a risky game, but it worked a little bit more in the second half. I just thought it was interesting. They didn't try to stick with it, for the second half. Um,
Oh, Frankie starting too was kind of wait, well, not Frankie. Who did he bring on? Luke De Jong
Luke De Jong.
early was kind of weird. Yeah, Luke
Yeah,
De
he
Jong
took he took
because
Memphis off.
he hadn't played at all either. Yeah, yeah. So that was kind of a weird decision. Dumfries too. He was so good against the U.S. and it was a little bit like of a coming back down to earth. I mean, he's still really good, but
And
it
it's
was
his fault
a
for the
coming back down
PK.
performance.
I think so.
Yeah,
One thing I was kind of
he got
thinking
he
about
got two yellows.
is I even texted Jeremy in real time because he was like, well, Ronaldo might not even start versus the other thing versus Morocco, and I was like. playing that Ramos guy or starting that Ramos guy, I think would be a mistake because he probably hasn't slept for the last 3 weeks or last 3 nights because
Since that hat trick
he's
game.
had everyone kind of praising him. Oh, look, you had a hat trick. You have more goals than like Messi and Ronaldo in the knockout round, and for being 21 or 20 years old, that probably got to him. That's all he probably heard. That's all he probably got texted. It's possible Dumfries kind of went through the same thing because that's all
Yeah,
anyone was praising him. And it's a young player, and it's hard to we see that a lot. We see that in a lot of sports where it's hard to bounce back. It's hard to regroup yourselves having to have a monster performance. Sometimes
yeah,
you
because
kind of
it's
reverse a
like
little bit.
we think, or at least like I don't know, we think they're making so much money, like they just they do what they do, and we don't really think we almost think that they're just like soccer robots, and they're real humans with emotions and ebbs and flows, highs and lows, and personal things that might be happening, or yeah, I think you're right, Ben. I think it did go to, but I also think that maybe Argentina saw what he did against the U.S. and put together a really good game plan, and he picked up he was obviously pretty frustrated or overwhelmed because he picked up the two yellows as well. So yeah, I think they kind of maybe exposed him and saw some weaknesses in the USA game that maybe they could get behind him when he's pushing up. I don't know, but yeah, like you're absolutely right. He's a 20-year-old. Kind of like with Gio, like things are gonna happen where they're not gonna emotions are going to be tough to handle at this point.
One thing that really was kind of annoying me is they, unlike us, they were able to actually exploit Blend a little bit defensively. Um, and they were able to get kind of get Ake a little bit outside, where they forced Ake to like leave that area. So
Mhm.
then it was just kind of Van Dyke kind of only defending that part of the area, and so it was allowing for cutbacks, which Argentina I mean, you have Messi, the best when it comes to like that kind of that kind of game, and
Hmm.
so it was well done by Argentina. I guess it's probably the last time we'll see Van Gaal. We know he's kind of struggling a little bit with cancer as well. So it's hard to kind of see him go out this way. But I think one thing that's kind of funny is they've already rehired his or they've already hired his replacement, and it's Coleman. And Coleman probably would have been the manager for this World Cup, probably the manager for their Euros if he hadn't taken the Barca job. And so
Oh
this
yeah,
isn't
that's right.
necessary. It is funny how they just like to reuse managers like laundry. Um, but this could be good as well. One thing that's interesting is I think at least in that second half, you saw the Netherlands kind of struggle a bit like we saw with England, like a, a creative kind of a guy in midfield. It wasn't just Frankie was kind of asked to kind of be a little bit more defensive. Kopenmeyers and yeah, Clausen or Berghaus, they weren't that kind of guy. So it felt like they were missing either a Genie Wijnaldum or
Yeah.
Ryan Gravenbeck. I think
Oh, Gravenberg would have been, yeah.
I think that was
He's someone that I
bit of a mistake.
guess, yeah, yeah, and I think he's someone that'll probably, in Euros and the next World Cup, we're gonna be like, yeah, this guy's good.
And there was Noah Lang this entire tournament or Xavi Simmons. I think we saw Xavi a little bit toward versus us. But yeah, it did feel like he could have brought on a couple guys in that extra time and didn't. So maybe a little missed
Yeah, that's a good
opportunity
point.
there as well.
Because Xavi Simmons is young, but he's been playing at PSV, and I mean I've seen PSV a little bit because they played Arsenal in Europe, and he's good. He's really good. He's got good numbers. A lot of assists, a couple goals. I know he's really young, but yeah, he could have played more. He's a talented player, and he probably I would imagine would be their future number 10 unless they want to play him as a 8.
Hmm. Well, there you
Hmm.
go. So let's see how much time do we got? We're close. We're
3
close.
minutos.
Okay. Oh no. I mean, yeah, with Morocco, Portugal, we talked about it a little bit. They win 1-0 with El Nesri. One thing that's kind of interesting is uh, you look at who Morocco have to line up, and it's Ziyech, it's Roman Sayes, it's Mazurai, who I think is day to day. Hakimi, Bonaru is at Sevilla, Aramovet is at Fiorentina, and Nesri is at Sevilla or Ajax. And maybe that's kind of the reasons we're kind of seeing more of these regions be a
Yeah.
little bit more competitive because they're playing in Europe too. So,
Yeah, and the Buffal too. He's another one. I don't know where
oh,
he is now,
Buffal,
but he
yeah,
was at
he
the
was at
yeah
City,
Buffal.
right?
or Southampton, one of those,
It might have been
one of those
Southampton.
teams.
Right, right. Good call. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where he is now, but yeah, Saiz, Bono, and then well, I mean they have. I guess it's kind of a breaking out party because we don't know too much about Amrabat, but he's really good now. We know that
Hmm.
after watching him.
I kind of want him at Liverpool, to be honest. But then again, I kind of say that with everyone. Mazurai is going to be interesting today because he wasn't able to play in the last game, and I think he's day to day. Ziyech, I think, is day to day as well, which could hurt. No,
That
no,
could
there
hurt.
won't be
Yeah,
no Roman Sayas, but there could be because it looked like he had a hamstring thing. But it looked like they could get a guard back. So
yeah,
maybe that'll help with Giroud. But Roman Sayas, I think, is a better player.
yeah. I think so too. And he had a great game against Portugal.
Yeah, and so this does feel kind of just this huge for African football. To finally have a team
It does.
reach the semis. It feels like the crowd there has embraced them. So France might be going into this where they're not the crowd favorite. Maybe that kind of
Yeah.
works against them.
Yeah, and they definitely better not. I don't think at this point they will be overlooking them, but yeah, they better not overlook this team because they will. They're gonna crawl like fight tooth and nail to keep this thing close, and they're gonna be moments of frustration for France, but they can't. They gotta just keep chipping away and shut down those counterattacks too. They I just if Morocco's pinned back, they're gonna get tired, and if they have to make changes looking at the bench, those are where we kind of start to see guys that we don't know
Yes,
much about.
that's a good
So
point. Hmm.
so like I think France probably will just either they'll have to stick to the game plan or maybe they will have to make changes. But they just got to keep hammering away and try to not get frustrated and turn on each other because that's when like maybe you slip up and you make a mistake when you're getting frustrated because you can't break down a good organized team.
I mean, it feels like if there ever was a game where it feels like they could possibly miss Pogba, it would be this game, where you would need someone to kind
Ooh,
of beat a player, be creative on the ball, because
good point.
they're going to be blocks everywhere, and it doesn't. Can Griezmann be able to thread those passes? I don't think that's in Tchouaméni's game. I don't think it's in Rabiot's game.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah,
Maybe
Rabiot's more like workhorsey
maybe
kind.
there'll have
Yeah,
to be a really good pass by Varane. I don't know. So that's kind of the thinking. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot of crossing and a lot of Giroud versus probably he'll probably have to beat two or three people in the air. Now
yeah,
he has been able to do that, but it does feel like this would be a game where maybe something like that would show up, or maybe not having Nkunku as an option to kind of bring on the bench, or yeah. So
because Bono didn't. I think he made a mistake on a cross in in the Portugal game, didn't he? But other than that, he played really well. But I think he did. I think he came out or something when he shouldn't have and missed
oh
something like that.
Pepe
So
almost
that's something
scored
to watch too.
at the very end. I don't know if that's the one.
Oh
Um,
yeah, maybe that one. Yeah,
yeah.
Pepe. Gosh,
I mean, one thing
probably
to
should.
quickly talk on Portugal is I do think it's interesting how Portugal is a pretty good example of this, where I, there are a lot of people like there are a lot of pundits saying second cycle curse. What is that? After the round of six or after the group after the group stages, because a lot of I think something like 5 of 7 advanced. But I think we really saw that a little bit in this one. We saw Tite, we saw England Southgate, and I think this would be another one too where it showed up. And I
Yeah.
think they've had Santos since I think when they won Euros.
Hmm.
Another thing that was interesting is I didn't think he used Portugal's attacking talent properly or the best way. I think he kind of mismanaged a little bit of that. I think we saw that a little bit with Southgate as well. So it's just one of those things where
Yeah.
Portugal still feel like they could easily regroup and be there with Ronaldo or not in 2 years time.
Yeah.
You have Jota back.
Well, that Leao, it's like flying, and they didn't play
I do
Leao
not
that
get why
much,
you
and
didn't
he's
play
someone
Leao.
that'll.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah, and you would imagine he'll be like one of the starters in Euros, right? I mean, he's there's no reason to not play him. It's not like he's not playing well at Milan. He's playing amazing. So yeah, that was something I was disappointed in too because he's a fun player to watch. I wanted more of him for sure.
not starting Cancelo was a bit weird. I know
Yeah,
Guerrero's a
that's
good
weird
player
too.
at Dortmund, but Cancelo's a different player. Um,
Mhm.
Bruno playing at right wing and not in midfield, I thought was weird. And so
Mm.
it felt like the lineup was a little bit unbalanced, and yeah, that kind of showed up. And then we'll end a little bit with the Croatia and Brazil game. That goes to PKs only because, like Jeremy mentioned, Brazil have basically have the game won, it seems, with a great goal by Neymar, and then I, Brazil allow I think it's Pedro who comes in, and he gets the ball,
Mhm.
and instead of trying to keep it, there's like 2 minutes left in the game. He plays a stupid ball for Fred to run onto, and Fred obliges. And what that does
Mhm.
is that leaves just Casemiro just basically by himself. And where the goal comes from is that basic area. I think it's May Lovara Mera is able to I think head the ball to Modric. Modric gets the ball to maybe it's either Kovacic or it might even be Plasic. He's able to get a turn and then pass out wide where the wing is completely open because Eder Militao is freaking out at this point. He's kind of running towards the center. He's not getting close enough to the crosser, and it's again one of those times where Brazil were tracking. Brazil were following the ball. They weren't following the runners, and it's just an easy putback where I think it's a deflection that fools Allison. But it's what you get
Mhm.
because Fred should not have lived. Fred should not have run to get that ball. He was brought on to be the legs to prevent transition moments, and that was the only way they were going to concede, and they did concede that way.
Yeah, and I mean, they had that thing. They had it wrapped up.
And I praised Croatia to start the game, but I'm kind of upset a little bit that they won because they didn't try to win this game. I think only Brazil were trying. I think Croatia's organization was good, but the goal that Brazil scored, it came through the middle, and we haven't really seen enough of that creativity through the middle. Neymar had a beautiful goal that should have been remembered, I would say, and instead it's people just kind of overlook it. But we
Mhm.
haven't seen enough of that this tournament. There's been a lot of like again the midfield has been clogged, and so everything's got to come from the wings. This is one of those goals where it did come from a little genius play in the middle, and it should have been enough to get them through.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it really should have. It was late on too, and you would think that. I mean, heads would have started to hang, and they should have closed it out for sure.
And then I mean Livakovic had 11 saves. He was amazing before he even got to the
Amazing.
PKs.
Yeah.
It was weird they had Rodrigo take the first one. I thought that was interesting. Um, I mean, yeah, but it's just Croatia's midfield three where we're able to do it again. Perisic is able to. I mean, Perisic has had a pretty wild career this whole time. He
Yeah.
he keeps showing up before we knew him at Spurs. I mean, before we knew him at
Mhm.
Inter. I think he was at Bayern
Yeah.
when they won the
Really weird.
Champions League.
Yeah, at Bayern randomly. Now he's like kind of playing fullback at times for Tottenham, or left wing back kind of.
Yeah,
And
he's
now
one of
he's
their
like
attackers.
he plays all over.
Yeah.
Yeah, now he's one of the yeah, he's fun, he's a fun player too. He's getting older. He's more experienced, but he's still fun, man, and he can play anywhere. I don't think he cares. He just wants to play.
And so I guess that's we'll kind of close it off there. I know you said you had to go. I guess we'll still be like a 2-hour show, but anything you want to
Fine,
kind of
fun.
close off with? Do you have any thoughts for the semis that start today and tomorrow?
Man, well, my thought is like I can't believe it's gone by so fast. It's crazy that we're like already here at the semifinals, and this weekend it's over. And we'll be back. Well, we'll be back to club at least. But yeah, man, I'm just hoping we have some teams that actually like go for it a little bit, like you mentioned. It would be nice to see like Morocco actually go out and kind of go for it a little bit. I know, if they win, they can't go for it the whole time, obviously, but
Yeah.
I'd just like to see them and Croatia like bring it to their opponents a little bit more. And then I hope we have at least one more set of PKs because the drama is so good on those PKs. I know like it's just basically like a lottery, but I love it, man. I know I don't think the players like it, but it's so good to watch, especially if like it's not your team in the PKs. Because I don't know how I would have done with like USA and PKs. It would have been the most nerve wracking experience for sports like ever.
One thing that's funny is I didn't realize it until it actually happened. Where I was trying to DVR a game, and when I didn't do like the extend.
Oh God, dude. Yeah, that happened to me too.
so,
Fucking yeah. That's
so
part of the reason I think why I hate the stoppage time because it's like 20 minutes too. And
something
yeah,
to remember
that
if
happened.
if you're going to DVR, especially if it goes to PKs, extend that up to another hour or,
Yep.
or, or
The
so.
Brazil game, we did like 30 minutes extension, and like we're watching the Brazil game, and they're going into they're going into extra time, and I was like, wait, there was like 10 minutes of stoppage time in the first half, 10 minutes in the second time. It's just gonna cut off.
Yeah.
and it did. It cut off right before PKs, and I like pulled it up on YouTube, but it's just not as fun, man. Like if the YouTube quality wasn't as good because it was like only a couple hours after the game. Yeah, so do that. Yeah, that's a good call, Ben, because that got me too.
If this goes well, one thing I want to lead off with because I'll ask the resident keeper here. If it does go to PKs, who has the edge? Is it Livakovic or Emi Martinez?
Oh God, dude, that is gonna be that's like a matchup of titans in the net for PKs. I think I go Martinez just because he'll like trash talk and get in the head
Ooh, good
of others,
call.
but I don't think he's as tall. I don't think he's as tall as Lakovic. Lakovic looks pretty tall,
Hmm.
so I don't know. That would be an excellent matchup.
I
And
mean,
then obviously like Messi and that would be a great game to go into PKs.
I think Jeremy will be texting. He was like, just as Argentina can lose, just Messi can't miss. at,
Oh
that, at
God,
that
yeah, it
moment,
can't be. Yeah,
at that moment, just Messi has his legacy sealed. I think everyone's going to look at him differently, especially after this tournament. It's just he can't miss. He can't miss today. Um,
just have him go first and set the tone early.
but there you go. Maybe hide him last. Do what Brazil did with Neymar. Um,
Oh
all right.
God, no, yeah, then you get skipped.
Well, we'll close off there. I guess our next show will be the final. So that'll be fun. We'll maybe touch a little bit on the semis, but mostly touch on the final. And then after that, Boxing Day, we turn around and we get club football again. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's still a fun time to follow the sport. It's been a fun World Cup, and hopefully we still have some fun moments. So I guess
yeah.
with that said, I guess I'll close this out and say, you guys stay squatty.
Stay squatty, folks.
Stop recording.